most of low-income Ghanaians struggle to pay off their rent advances. According to the Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa, 48% of households that rent housing units are based in the Greater Accra region, which represents the highest proportion among all regions. And due to the high rental rates, people sleep in house-like structures like the kiosk. So, as part of efforts to increase access to secure and affordable rental housing for lower-income households and youth across the country, government has officially launched the National Rental Assistance Scheme. With a seed capital of 30 million Ghana cedis, the project, in partnership with the private sector, will provide a low-interest loan scheme to assist eligible Ghanaians to pay rent in advance.
Globally, rental housing forms an integral part of a well-functioning housing market and plays a critical role in increasing access to affordable housing options, particularly for the youth and low-income groups. As a people-focused government, providing meaningful shelter for our citizens has formed a significant part of this government's development agenda, and measures taken to address problems associated with the housing sector, especially the rental housing sector, have remained vital to our development agenda. The scheme will provide low-interest loans to eligible Ghanaians to enable them pay rent in advance. These loans will be repaid monthly to match the tenor of the rent and will be supported by a bank guarantee in this case to ensure sustainability. And that is how it has been done. And because the management of the scheme is being outsourced to the private sector, you are inevitably going to have no political interference, because if they give a loan to somebody who is not eligible, they will lose money. So I think there's an inbuilt mechanism to stop political interference in the operationalization of this scheme so that it is available for all eligible Ghanaians. Ladies and gentlemen, on this note, I hereby declare the National Rental Assistance Scheme duly launched.
The initial allocation is the 30 million that has been publicly stated. 18 million of that has been made available so far. In terms of budget allocation or where it's coming from, you know that I'm a private person, so I do not have some of these details in regards to which funding is coming from, which budget year it's coming from. What I am aware of is that the government has allocated 30 million to this scheme, and 18 million of it has been made available to allow commencement of. Earlier estimates or pronouncement by the government was the 100 million that you referred to. But we are all aware that funds are not readily available, and there's been cutbacks in some of the government expenditure. But as far as I am concerned or aware, 30 million was allocated to it, and of that 18 is now made available. The money doesn't come to me directly. It goes through a bank who guarantees the money, makes sure that it is used for its intended purposes. But it's not money that comes into my account that I can spend freely. It's not like that. There's been a lot of work done in the background to make sure that the money is it goes to its intended purposes. There's been a lot of checks and balances to it. I am not too my focus is to make sure that we pay rent for those who apply and qualify.
All right. And
so we are able to get rid of rent advance. There's been an arrangement of how I can access the money and then how I can validate that the money is going to the right people who are the landlords, we are allowed to pay up to 2 years of rent. And so we will follow that. Our goal is to get rid of rent advance. We don't want to misapply any government funds. We want to do the work transparently. I have offered to publish publicly every rent that we pay online, not the details of the beneficiary, but account. So the general public can see online how many beneficiaries we've paid rent for at any given time. So this is not a loan. We are not loaning anybody money. The money, if you went out to get a loan, the money will be handed to you. What we are doing is paying rent directly to the landlord. So it's not a loan, it's an arrangement where we rent from the landlord directly and we sublet it to the beneficiary who is going to live there. So that is the current arrangement. The interest on it is 12%, as it has been agreed. So the money is paid directly to the landlord, and the beneficiary who is going to live in the rented apartment will make monthly payments back to the scheme. So that is how we recoup the money. The whole idea is to get rid of rent advance. And, giving money to beneficiaries directly, we know that might not, be used for its intended purpose. So our solution is to pay directly to the landlord, sign a tenancy agreement with the landlord, and then subsequently allow the beneficiary to enjoy the use of the rented apartment or room, and then the beneficiary makes monthly payments back to the scheme. Okay. To solve that problem. So if you read the law carefully, it says that the landlord cannot demand more than 6 months. The landlord cannot demand rent that is more than 6 months. But if the tenant has the funding to offer more than 6 months, then it doesn't go against the law. So that is the technicality of the law. But government recognizes that law is unenforceable on so many fronts. The landlord can decide to give the property to somebody else or indirectly deny any renter who wishes to enforce that law and says that a relative is coming to use the specific apartment, and for that reason he's no longer renting. So there are a few loopholes around that law that makes it unenforceable. And government, even in the current rent law that is before Parliament, is looking to extend that law to a year. So we all recognize that there is a problem that needs to be solved. In the meantime, if we don't do anything, it is our brothers and sisters and relatives, and ourselves who are burdened with 2-year rent advance that doesn't.
Tonight we are talking about a novel introduction by the government that is called the National Rental Assistance Scheme, and this essentially hopes to target or tackle this particular deficit. Stay with us, we'll be right back after this break to delve into the issue. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for your time here on Spotlight.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So when the rental assistance scheme was being launched, I remember one of the critical questions that people asked was the fact that it seems to be reinforcing, for want of a better word, an illegality or an unlawful practice in the renting industry in Ghana. What will be your response to these criticisms? Okay.
So to answer your question, this assertion is coming from a section in the Rent Act. That is the 1963, that's the Rent Act 1963, that is the Act 220. And when we look critically on Section 25, Section 5, which talks about tenancy, it has categorized these tenancies in two folds. We have short tenancy and long tenancy. The definition of the short tenancy is the tenancy that does not go beyond 6 months. And then long tenancy are tenancies that go beyond 6 months. For a short tenancy, the law demands that the landlord is forbidden to demand more than 1 month's rent. So if it's a short tenancy, the landlord has no right to demand 2 months' rent, for instance. And if it's a long tenancy, the landlord is forbidden to demand more than 6 months' rent advance. The key word in that section is demand.
Right.
There's nothing in the act that forbids the landlord from collecting more than 6 months' rent if it's a long tenancy.
Right.
So the section that the scheme is condoning illegality is wrong. The action where there is demand. Okay, so if I come to you as a landlord and I have my 1 year rent advance and I give it to you, at that particular moment, it wasn't your demand. You didn't ask for it. I am willing to give you 1 year so that I will be convenient in staying in your premises.
Would you not say that that is because the supply of housing units and the affordability of same is very limited, and so tenants or citizens are rushing for the few that are available, and so it's by demand and supply. So if you won't take it, someone else will take it. But does that mean it is fair to the person who cannot take it because they don't have that amount of money to pay that long tenure?
Yeah. So the perception that the scheme is condoning illegality is what I want to clear. That there's nothing in the law that forbids the landlord from collecting. We understand the housing deficit is huge. So those who have the money will go and pay. But the scheme going to pay more than 6 months rent advance, it's not illegal.
It's not illegal.
Because at that point, it's only when the landlord demands more than the 6 months that the contravention has occurred. So the scheme is not condoning any illegality.
Very well.
The action word is demand. If the landlord demands it, you bring the evidence, we can prosecute the person. But if you send the money to the landlord without him or her demanding it, then no illegality has been committed.
So back to my question,
Yeah.
How is this system fair to the person who cannot afford, or perhaps, let's say somebody is a security guard, he earns 500 cedis a month, he has a family of 3, including his wife that to take care of, and every month he's paying at least 150 cedis for rent. How do we help such a person?
Yeah, so this is the main reason why the scheme is there. So that those who are willing to give the landlords 1 year, so that they look down on those who will be willing to pay monthly or up to 6 months. That's why the scheme is there. So that you, the applicant or the beneficiary, so the upcoming beneficiary, can go and negotiate with the landlord. The landlord, after knowing how much you are supposed to pay, which should be 30% of your income, then you negotiate, you come and apply on the scheme. The scheme will now go acting as a tenant to pay the rent advance. If it's 1 year you want to stay at that place, or 2 years, we pay directly to the landlord. And then we come and sit down with you as a security man who gets 150 a month, which fall within your 30%. Then you pay that 150 cedis per monthly, so that the assistance have been given to the landlord already. Now you have the opportunity to pay your 150, which is monthly.
So in this case, the scheme or the government acts as a tenant on the agreement. So when the landlord brings that tenancy agreement, whose name is on it?
The scheme, just as I said, the name on it will be the scheme. Okay? Then the scheme will go and then write or sign a subletting agreement with the beneficiary. You know, our laws under Section 22 talks about subletting. But before you sublet, you have to seek the consent, written consent of the landlord. So the scheme will go and sign the agreement, seek the written consent of the landlord that I'm going to sublet. Then we pay the money to you. We come and sign the subleasing agreement with the beneficiary, so that now you have the chance to pay installment monthly, so that the money that has been paid to the landlord, you defray it by paying your monthly rent.
So in this case, the landlord does not directly deal with the tenant who is occupying the building.
Exactly. So that's why the notion of a loan does not come in.
Okay.
Because if it's a loan, you give me the money direct and I pay you. But in this case, it's not a loan. It's an assistance given to you so that you can pay your monthly. so that if anything happens, the landlord has to deal with the scheme. So that if you default in paying, the landlord has no issue with you. You default with the scheme. The scheme has necessary to follow the due process, the legal process. Okay? In the Rent Act again, the law does not give you the right as a tenant to owe any landlord a month's rent. So if you cannot pay your installment, the scheme can initiate the legal action, take you off. So, okay? They will go and collect the remaining amount from the landlord. So that the landlord does not even give you the money back because the money does not belong to you.
So is the scheme still operating with the provisions in the rent law that you just mentioned?
Yes, so the scheme is here to abolish any law.
Okay.
All our laws and rules, acts are all enforced. The scheme is not here to abolish any law. We are applying to all the laws in the country.
Talk to us about the success rate. You started in April,
yes,
implementation. So how has it been so far?
Yes, so the launch was done on the 31st of January. So in March, we were able to start paying. So we paid 9 people in March. So 9 beneficiaries came on board. And in April, we had 112. And then in May, another 139 people got benefit. And then in June, we had 110. And then July, there was 218. And then this month of August, we've had 160 people. And as you are aware, we are piloting in 6 regions. And that 6 regions comprise of Greater Accra region, Ashanti region, Bono East, Western, Eastern, and then Northern region. So as we speak currently, we have a total number of 748 beneficiaries. And then Greater Accra has a chunk of those beneficiaries with a number of 476, which constitutes about 63.64%. The next on the list is 130, which goes to the Ashanti region, and that constitutes 17.38%. Then Bono East has a total number of beneficiaries of 73, and that is 9.76. Then we move on to Western region, which we have a 53 beneficiary in that region. That constitutes 7.09. Then Eastern region followed with 10 beneficiaries, which is 1.34. And the list is Northern region with 6 beneficiaries, and that's 0.8%. You know, we chose these 6 regions based on statistics from the Rent Control Department. Right. The first 5 regions constitute regions where there are high rates of rent cases, and the Northern region is one of the least. So that's why we've chosen. And since it's the pilot project where we are learning lessons, we decided to choose these high 5 regions and then 1 list so that we can learn lessons. So after the 2 years pilot project, we can scale up to the entire 16 regions, whilst we've educated ourselves with some of the ups and downs in these 6 regions. So this is where we are now.
I'll come back to the lessons learned, but okay. Who qualifies to be a beneficiary of the program? Okay,
so at the launch, we expose the eligibility criteria. The first is that we have to be an 18-year Ghanaian. Okay, you know our constitution, from 18 years, we consider you as an adult. So you have to be 18 years. You have to be a Ghanaian, because the scheme is here for Ghanaians, not for any foreigners. So that is 2. And then 3, you have to prove of income. Okay, because at the end of the day, you have to pay back the money that is given to the landlord. So you have to prove income. You can be a government worker, that's the formal one, or informal one. Just have to prove that you get income. So if you are a tomato seller or a coconut seller, and you save your money in a Momo account, or you have a Susu card, that proves that you get money, and you get this amount of money every month or every year. And we calculate that when you take your rent out, it will be a maximum of 30%, you qualify. Okay, so these are the criteria that you have to follow. Okay, so your bank statement to prove, your Momo account to prove income. So these are the basic things. But in a nutshell, you have to go and then secure the place. It's not a scheme duty to secure a place and give it to impose it on you. Okay. No, you have to find a place where it's closer to your work or it's convenience to you. You negotiate with the landlord so that it wouldn't be that the scheme is overpricing. You negotiate with the landlord. Make sure that if the rent per month is 30% of your income, when you get the total amount, you just come to the scheme apply, and then we'll follow you to go and physically look at the place. But we do due diligence.
Okay, so let me understand.
Yeah.
The person who needs the accommodation has to find the place and actually negotiate the price with the landlord before they come to you. Okay. Okay. So it means that still the landlord will have some form of relation with the person who is occupying.
Exactly. So the scheme is here just to support or assist you in paying your money. Then you pay monthly to the scheme. Because at the end of the day, you'll be staying with the landlord in the same apartment. Okay? Yes.
How has the response from landlords been so far to this scheme?
No, the issue is that they are happy.
Are they?
They are happy because now they don't have that burden to be chasing people for rent. Okay? They are secure rent that is paid to them. It's up to the scheme to do that wahala in retrieving the money that has been paid to the landlord. That's why I mentioned that at the end of the day, if you cannot pay your month's rent, then you have to vacate. Because the money has been advanced to the landlord, and the scheme does not want to go back to government and tell government that no, the money you gave us initially has been squandered because a lot of Ghanaians have lost their job. That will be unfair. Okay.
Peradventure, I have a job. The job pays me regularly, and so that is the intention with which I came to apply for the assistance. But it gets to a point where my salary is delaying, so that 1 month period that you have given me, I can't meet that demand. What happens to me? Okay,
so that's what I say. The law states that either you pay or you give an information, you communicate what you just mentioned to the landlord. We're in a human society. Definitely certain things will happen.
To the landlord or to you?
To the scheme. Okay. At the end of the day, the money has been given to the landlord already. Your commitment is to the scheme. So if you have any itch or you have any inconvenience, you have any problem, you speak with the operators of the scheme. Okay? There should be communication. Because if every first of every month we receive your salary, we receive the repayment, and then we enter into second, you've not communicated to the landlord, to the scheme, then there's a question mark. So at any point where there's any problem, you speak with the scheme so that the scheme will understand. We give grace period for you to make repayment, or you find an alternative way to pay so that your benefit will continue.
Mr. Apostle, is this scheme here to stay? We have had a lot of initiatives come and go by change of government. Is this here to stay? Okay, so the scheme is not MPP. The scheme is government. And as we speak now, there is a project management committee which is overseeing the operations of rent masters, who are the operators of the scheme. The constitution of the project management committee is Ministry of Finance, Attorney General's office, Ministry of Works and Housing, who is the mother of this scheme, and then rent control. Okay, so at the end of the day, the project management committee is supervising the operation of rent masters. Just as you mentioned, it's here to stay. And it's a pilot project we are in now for the 6 regions for a period of 2 years. After the 2 years, I've mentioned that it will be scaled up to the entire region. It's a national rental assistance scheme, national. So every citizen in the country, in the corner you are in the country, should be able to benefit. So to answer your question, the project management committee, of which I'm a member, we are focused that this scheme has come to stay. That's why we don't want any beneficiary to come and start telling us stories that I've paid for 3 months, I've lost my job, so you allow me to stay for a period. No, we will apply the rent laws in the country, which states that you should have no right to owe any landlord more than a month's rent. Just as I said, if there are any inches, just speak with the scheme. We will find an alternative for you to pay it at a later date, or an alternative to make payment. But we don't want a situation that this month, this person has taken it for free. Another month, this person has taken 2 months. At the end of the day, taking month, 2 months, it will be eating into the money. And before you realize, the money, the seed money that has been given has been squandered by the notion that people have lost their job. So it has come to stay. We'll be right back after this break. Please stay with us. You're welcome back to Spotlight on MX24 television. Tonight we are talking about housing and the National Rental Assistance Scheme. With me here is the Public Relations Officer for the Rent Control Department as well as a spokesperson for the National Rental Assistance Scheme. His name is EMMANUEL HOVEY. Before we come back to him, let's go and watch this interaction with some of the beneficiaries and the landlords of the scheme. We'll be right back.
Most of us, we came to this town after we graduate from school. We came here in search of something doing, just to make ourselves comfortable. But it's not really easy for us. You search for rent everywhere. Even when you get the rent, they are not even taking 1 year advance, and it's not easy. The landlord will say 2 years, 3 years. And if you don't have that kind of money, that means you are going to sleep on the street.
It will help the youth, the upcoming. Right now, Ghana is hard, so hard that you can't even give 2 years. It will help me, and it will help a lot of people I know.
But this time a very good idea. Kofo bebre malata gugu abontin sa ndi sa adwen papa aba anything so betima boa dia na wonya baby da na afi na mum so wonya baby da mpo na oni adwuma a ebe da na do time so otu aba na ka what manya sika.
Mr. Posu, you were talking to me about lessons learned so far. Yes. I mean, the benefits, we may have seen them, but what are some of the lessons that you have learned since implementing the scheme?
Okay, so far so good. You know, rent masters were involved or were in operation of such a scheme. Government just partnered them so that we can scale up to a larger population. So because of their track records, because of their steps in recovering those money, they've implemented such. And then so far, we've not had anybody defaulting. Just as I mentioned, there are some small, just like people salary delays and those things. But you have communication with the scheme and everything will be sorted out. But so far, we've not had any serious complaint like people defaulting in paying as we have a normal rental scheme. No, we don't have any issue. But as we go on, we see where we will stand. But when we get to the river, we'll cross it. But based on your question or specific to your question, we don't have any serious issue apart from people's salary delay for some few days. There's nothing more.
But if you're starting this scheme over again, say in September, what would you have done differently? What would you consider adding to what currently exists?
No, so far so good. You see, I've mentioned the various ministries that have been involved. And before the launch of the program, there are experts in those fields, okay? Having rent control on board as a member of the project management committee, we have experienced landlord-tenant relationship already. So we brought our expertise on board. Ministry of Finance, based on disbursement of funds, they also brought their expertise on board. Ministry at the Attorney General's office, legal issues, they also brought their expertise on board. Ministry of Works and Housing, containing government properties and government bungalows, dealing with government workers, deducting their money from source every month. They also learn a lot of lessons in those fields. So bringing these experts on board before the launch of the program has been very, very perfect. Okay, so just as I said, maybe because the number is not so huge, 748 as we speak now, we are still trying to see if we scale up to the entire region, talking about thousands of people, how would that be? But we are also learning lessons as we move on, so that as the number grows, we also tighten our belts.
Where is the scheme getting the money from to pump into this initiative? Okay,
so the short history is that, you know, the MPP manifesto promised 100 million Ghana cedis. But before the launch, 30 million was allocated from government coffers. Okay, so that money is coming from government coffers. So as we speak now, we are working with the 30 million that government has promised us.
If the 30 million is consumed,
yes,
where next are we, or because this is a cycle, we're expecting that people who have rented will pay and then we'll use it to continue on the process?
So it's a revolving fund, okay? But we anticipate the 30 million will get finished. Government has promised it to continue to put in the budget to increase it to the 100 million that it promised. And again, it's a public-private partnership. We are still talking to individual banks, those who can, because there's a 12% interest. It's not totally free. Okay, there's a 12% interest that is added to the money that is paid to the landlord for you, the beneficiary, to pay as it's spread for you. So it's going to be lucrative that people who have some monies can also come on board. So just as I mentioned, the notion of the scheme is a private-public partnership. And then people will be invited, especially the banks, to also pump in funds as we grow. But for now, we've not exhausted the 30 million. And when we get there, just as I mentioned, government will continue to put it in its budget for us to get more funds to operate this scheme.
Yeah, but does the government has that capacity to do that continuously and
Yeah,
sustainably?
Okay, so it's a revolving fund as well. And if we are getting top up, apart from the repayment plus the interest and all those things, when we get to 1 year or 2 years, we'll see how big the scheme or the portfolio of the scheme will be. But just as I mentioned, government has assured us that it will continue to put in its budget for an increment of this 30 million. We hope to exceed the 100 million if all Ghanaians come on board. Those who are in need, of course. People can pay themselves. We can't force them to come on scheme. But those who are in need can come on board. We assist them with the payment. Then we give you the chance to pay it monthly.
Let me go back to the example I was making of the security guard who earns 500 cedis a month. So assuming that I'm renting one of these wooden structures, maybe around Baoleshi, and I'm interested in this scheme, do I qualify with my salary of 500 cedis? And what kind of apartment am I likely to get? Okay, so at the end of the day, your rent should not exceed 30% of your income. Okay. So if you earn 1,000 cedis, your rent should not exceed 300 cedis. So you have to look at your pocket and look at the kind of accommodation you have to go in for. We cannot impose it on you. At the end of the day, we look at how much we have to pay the landlord, look at your salary, and look at the deduction we have to do per month. So if you rented, you take 1,000 cedis, you're going to rent a place of 500. That's 50% of your income. We can't assist you. So if I come like that, you won't accept? No. We reject you. We deny you. Other people you have rejected? Yeah, a lot of rejection. Okay. A lot of rejection. You know, we are very critical about the scheme. Okay, we are very critical. As at 1st August, there were 4,115 people who have hit our platform. Okay, a lot of people want to check if the scheme is working. Okay, out of that, we've denied 1,112 people. Based on what? Based on what we've just talked about. Because you receive 1,000 cedis, you've gone for accommodation, which is 400. You are out already. Okay, and then those who have not completed the application, I told you the eligibility criteria. If you don't have Ghana card, you can't come. If you don't have payslip or you don't have proof of income, you can't come. If you are below 18 years, you can't come. Okay, so those who have incomplete maybe you've provided all the documents, but you don't have your Ghana card, which means you've not completed your application. And we have about 709 people pending. Pending can come in these various forms. Of course, within 5 to 10 days after you made your application with all the documents, we go and check the accommodation you've indicated. So that if it's a wooden structure at a corner at Baoleshi, and you say you are paying 500 cedis, it brings a question mark. So we have to go physically and go and check. So those are the pending. So after we make that verification and you qualify, we just approve your money, which we have about 305 people which have been approved, are waiting their money. So as we speak now, a lot of them have received their money as well. So there are a lot of deniers. So how do you communicate the deniers to the people? You just send them a mail? You know, between the 5 and 10 days, you get a notification as to why your application is incomplete. You get a notification. Can they reapply? Yeah, you reapply if all your documents are ready.
you apply. And let me mention this again, that the application is free, it's not free. So that you have to pay 100 cedis as a application fee. So those denial people are part of it. If you apply without paying the application fee, we put you aside.
But how, if this is an assistance scheme, somebody will make the argument that charging 100 cedis is perhaps too much. So if I can't afford the 100 cedis, it means I don't qualify for the scheme.
No, what we have to also think about is that the processing of one application is tedious. We use systems, we use platforms, we even go physically to look at those things. Let's ask ourselves, are we going to dip our money into the seed money to work on this one? Otherwise, operational costs will take care of all those things. So it's just a support compared to the percentage you are paying from the bank. Okay, it's very huge. So all these things are checks so that we shade those who are not serious from those who are serious. Yeah.
So beyond the rental assistance scheme, are there other measures that the rent control department, for instance, or government is putting in place, since you're part of the operational team, to address the persistent rent challenges, specifically in the capital or in urban areas? Okay,
so there are other things we are doing. One critical issue is about the fees that hostels charges. Okay. We've been talking to our mother ministry, which Ministry of Works and Housing, to address this huge money that are being demanded from students and their guidance and their parents. So that's one aspect. The other issue is about passing or reviewing our current acts. We understand there are a lot of things we have to change. Like the 6 months issue you talked about. So it's mind-boggling that the act is talking about demand and has not talked about receiving.
Exactly.
So we are streaming that whether you collect it or not, it's an offense. But currently it's not there. So we've proposed that it should be factored into the new act so that we'll have a clear understanding of what the law says. And then we talked about renting a premises to a stranger. Now it's mandatory that before a landlord rents a place to somebody, which we've proposed in the act again, you have to do some checks. You have to get a background checks. Okay, it's not everybody that you can rent a place to, especially for foreigners. You should make sure that the person has a residential permit or a working permit so that it will not be disadvantage to our Ghanaian people. So all these things are there. Talking about terrorist act and all those things. It's mandatory on you as a landlord that before you give a premises to somebody, you should know a little bit about the person before, so that you don't harbor any criminal into our country. So
how
there
are
are a
you
lot
enforcing
of
this? How are you ensuring
no,
that
the law has not been passed yet. It's a proposal in the bill that when it's passed, landlords will be mandated to do all these things before they give their premises out.
How far have we come in terms of the passage?
Okay, so as far as we are aware, first reading has gone on at Parliament. We'll be able to engage stakeholders. Everybody involved in the rental business has been engaged. Proposals are still coming to the Parliament to see everybody's opinion about the thing. Second reading will follow, and third reading will follow, and then it will be passed. We are praying that before they rise finally,
for the end of the year.
For the end of the year, they will pass this act so that all of us will enjoy it.
My last question to you before we go is an issue about dollarization of apartments in Ghana. I read a Facebook post. Let me just read excess of it. It says, so who is renting these shops that landlords are quoting hundreds and hundreds of dollars monthly for? By the time the landlord is done talking, I just look at the other tenants differently. So it's coming back to the issue about demand and supply. I go to a place, I want to rent a shop or an accommodation, and they are charging me in dollars, but that is not permissible.
Okay.
So what is the rent control department doing to tackle this?
So let me refer you to this slogan, see something, say something. The issue about dollarization in our country is a mandate of Bank of Ghana. They've issued several press releases notifying Ghanaians and cautioning people who do business in dollar. Okay, it's not peculiar to only rentals.
Yeah.
Even school fees and those things, some schools charge in dollars. The issue there is that it's not forbidding that we should not charge in dollars, but the Bank of Ghana must give you a license. So if you don't have a license and you do transact any business in dollars, that's where you commit the crime. So just as I mentioned again, it's not peculiar to rentals or housing rentals, but it cut across some of the business. People even sell cars in dollars. Okay, so see something, say something. When you get to the court, the rule of the game is evidence.
Right.
Okay, so if you don't have evidence, that any Ghanaians, we get afraid of reporting our friend. You know the person is charging in dollars. You know the person has collected dollars in you in exchange of any services, but you keep quiet. So we are shooting our foots ourselves. Okay, if you keep on saying, oh, what I say, sometimes I say that. If you know the right thing and you stand on it, you force the other person to do the right thing. Okay, so let's be citizens and not spectators. Is that not so?
Yeah, very well. Thank you so much for your time here on Spotlight. Is there any
Yes.
last word you have, just in a few seconds?
Okay, so let's go back to the National Rental Assistance Scheme. It's a scheme and not a scam. As when it was launched, people were perceiving it to be one of those things, but there are credible people on the Project Management Committee. I've mentioned the various ministries. So let's avail ourselves, let's go into it and benefit from it. Until the government builds this affordable housing for us to go and occupy, the private sector is also, the 2.0 to 1.8 is because of the private sector. Okay, so we want to encourage them more to build the houses. If you cannot get people, the scheme will pay the money. Then because the tenants want to pay monthly. The scheme now is in between the landlord and the tenant.
Right.
We'll pay the money to the scheme, then we'll give you the opportunity to pay rent. So those who have not heard about it, you go to the www.nras.gov. That's the National Rental Assistance Scheme. Even if you type it on the search engine, you get the portal. So you apply there, and then we'll come to your aid. Okay, and then you can call this number 055-134-1515. 055-134-1515. Any question you have about the rental assistance scheme, it's a WhatsApp number as well. You can WhatsApp all your questions and there will be somebody to assist you.
Thank you so much for your time here on
Thank you
Spotlight.
very much.
Unfortunately, this is the end of our show today. I hope you have been educated spending the past 1 hour with us. My name is Adwoa Tenkoramaa. Until we meet again next time. Bye-bye.